In 1923, two brothers from the American Midwest founded an animation studio in their uncle's garage in Los Angeles. 100 years later, that studio is the largest entertainment company on Earth, controlling theme parks on 3 continents, a movie studio, a streaming platform, a cruise line, a sports network, and a wholly owned town in Central Florida. What you know about Disney is the brand. What sits beneath the brand is older, stranger, and in many places considerably darker. What follows is a guided descent through the layers of the Walt Disney Company. Tier 1, the surface brand. The Disney that every parent recognizes. The Walt Disney Company today owns Pixar, Lucasfilm Marvel Entertainment, 20th Century Studios, ABC, ESPN, National Geographic, Hulu, and a controlling stake in dozens of subsidiary properties. It operates parks in Anaheim, Orlando, Tokyo, Paris, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. It generates roughly $90 billion in annual revenue. The official corporate origin story is well rehearsed. Walt Disney, born in Chicago in 1901. Brother Roy, the business mind. A pet mouse in a Kansas City studio inspired the design of Mickey. The breakthrough was synchronized sound in Steamboat Willie, 1928. The first feature-length animated film was Snow White, 1937. Theme parks came in 1955. Walt died of lung cancer in 1966. That is the version on every museum plaque, every authorized biography, every park guidebook. It is true, it is also incomplete. At this top tier, the famous family-friendly Disney facts. The original Mickey was almost named Mortimer. Walt voiced Mickey himself until 1947. The Disneyland opening day in July 1955 was a disaster. Counterfeit tickets, broken rides, a gas leak. These are the safe stories they get told at the parks. They are not where this episode lives. Below this tier, the surface narrative starts to bend. Tier 2, the known controversies. Subjects that are documented, public, and yet rarely brought up in the company's own messaging. First, Song of the South. A 1946 hybrid live-action and animated feature based on the Uncle Remus stories by Joel Chandler Harris. The film is set on a plantation in the post-Civil War South. Its depiction of black sharecroppers as cheerful. Devoted Servants drew criticism on release and has been the subject of escalating reappraisal ever since. Disney has not released the film for home video in the United States in any format. It is not on Disney Plus. It is referenced obliquely in park signage. The film's most famous song, Zip-a-dee-doo-dah, remains a Disney standard. The film itself is officially missing. The Splash Mountain ride at Disneyland and Walt Disney World was themed entirely to Song of the South for 33 years. In 2023, after years of debate, the ride was rethemed to The Princess and the Frog. The animatronic Brr Rabbit was removed. The original ride no longer exists. The film it was based on is, for practical purposes, unviewable. Second, the racial caricatures preserved on Disney Plus. When Disney Plus launched in 2019, several classic animated films were released with warning cards acknowledging outdated cultural depictions. The Crows in Dumbo named after a slur. The Siamese Cats in Lady and the Tramp. King Louie and the Orangutan Ensemble in The Jungle Book. The American Indian sequences in Peter Pan. These were not removed. They were prefaced. The company chose preservation with acknowledgement over erasure. Third, the animator strike of 1941. Walt Disney spent the late 1,930 seconds building the largest animation studio in the world. He paid below industry standard, expected unpaid overtime, and dismissed unionization efforts as a communist conspiracy. In May 1941, the screen cartoonist guild led a walkout. The strike ran for 5 weeks. It produced the picket signs that would, decades later, become collector's items. It also broke the personal trust between Walt and many of his animators. Several of the strike's leaders were fired or driven out of the studio. Some never worked in American animation again. Fourth, Walt's testimony before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1947. Walt named individuals he believed had attempted to organize his studio under communist influence. He named Herbert Sorrell, William Pomerantz, and Maurice Howard by name. This testimony fed directly into the Hollywood blacklist. Several of those named never worked in the industry again. Disney did not apologize for this testimony in his lifetime. The company has not formally addressed it since. At Tier 2, the Surface brand still resembles the brand you know. At Tier 3, it begins to shift. Tier 3, Walt Disney the man as opposed to Walt Disney the brand. Walt smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day for most of his adult life. He died of lung cancer in December 1966. The official Disney biographies acknowledge the cause of death, almost none describe the consumption that caused it. Photographs of Walt with a cigarette are rare in the official archive. He was nearly always photographed with the cigarette out of frame. This was a deliberate marketing choice during his lifetime. It has been a deliberate archival choice since the FBI file on Walt Disney. Walt Disney was a confidential informant for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. His FBI file, released under the Freedom of Information Act, runs to several hundred pages. Walt began cooperating with the Bureau in the 1942nd and was given the official title of Full Special Agent. In charge contact in 1954, a designation that allowed J. Edgar Hoover to ask Walt for information on Hollywood figures of interest. In exchange, Walt was permitted to film at Bureau facilities and received Bureau cooperation on certain productions. The Frozen Head Myth. On the 15th of December 1966, Walt died at St. Joseph's Hospital in Burbank. He was cremated 2 days later at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. His ashes are interred there in a private garden. Within months of his death, a rumor began that Walt had been cryogenically frozen. The rumor has persisted for 60 years. It is false. The cremation records are public. Forest Lawn confirms the interment. The first commercial cryonic freezing in the United States occurred in January 1967, weeks after Walt's body had already been cremated. The rumor persists because the image of a man so committed to the future that he refused to participate in the past is more powerful than the actual records. Walt's politics. Walt was a registered Republican in an industry that skewed Democratic. He attended John Birch Society events. He voiced public support for Barry Goldwater in 1964. He maintained close professional relationships with several conservative members of Congress. Walt's politics were not hidden during his life. They have, however, been carefully softened in posthumous biographies issued by the company. The personal cruelties. Multiple animators who worked closely with Walt described his temper. He was known to humiliate employees in meetings, to retaliate against perceived disloyalty, to remember slights for decades. Several of the original 9 Old Men, the senior animators who shaped Disney's golden age, recorded in private interviews that they feared him as much as they admired him. The man was harder than the brand. The brand has spent 60 years smoothing him. Tier 4. The Parks. Specifically, what happens at the parks that the parks would prefer guests not discuss. Club 33. On the second floor above Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland's New Orleans Square, there is an unmarked door. Behind it is Club 33, the only place in any Disney park that legally serves alcohol to non-private events. Membership is reportedly invitation, only with a wait list that has lasted decades. Initiation fees in the high tens of thousands of dollars. Annual dues in the thousands. Walt himself designed Club 33 to host VIP guests during park visits. He did not live to see it open. The actual membership list is private. Confirmed members over the years have included corporate executives, celebrities, and politicians. The utilitars. At Walt Disney World, the Magic Kingdom is built on top of a hidden ground floor. The visible park is on what is technically the second story. Beneath it run 9 acres of service corridors called the utilitars, a tunnel system used by cast members to move between zones without being seen by guests in costume in the wrong area. A trash vacuum system runs through the utilitars, pneumatically pulling waste from the park above to a central collection facility. Costumed cast members eat, change, and break entirely beneath the guests' feet. The utilitars are not a secret, they are simply invisible. Deaths in the parks. Disneyland and Walt Disney World are private property. They are also 2 of the most attended tourist destinations on Earth. Over the park's decades of operation, there have been guest deaths, some from underlying medical conditions, some from accidents on rides, some from incidents that were the park's fault and were settled quietly. Park policy is consistent. A guest who dies on Disney property is, by company protocol, declared dead off property, typically at a nearby hospital. The number of in-park fatalities since opening is in the dozens. The Disney corporate communications strategy is to never acknowledge a specific incident publicly. Local news outlets cover them. Disney does not. The Reedy Creek Improvement District. When Walt Disney purchased the land in Central Florida that would become Walt Disney World, he negotiated, through a series of shell companies, a special legal arrangement with the state of Florida. The Reedy Creek Improvement District was established in 1967. It granted the company effective governmental authority over 25,000 acres of Florida land. Disney could issue its own building permits, run its own fire department, operate its own utilities, even, in theory, build its own nuclear power plant. For 55 years, Disney was the de facto government of its own 40-square-mile sovereign zone. In 2023, the state legislature voted to dissolve the original district and replace it with a state-appointed oversight board. The territorial arrangement persists. The political control has shifted. The original Walt envisioned a working city. He died before it was built. What replaced his vision was a theme park empire that quietly retained the legal apparatus of a city-state, cast members, and the smile rule. Inside a Disney park, the human staff are not employees, they are cast members, they are not at work, they are on stage. They are never to break character in front of guests, they are never to publicly smoke or eat in costume, they are never to discuss the operations of the park. Cast members sign extensive non-disclosure agreements. Termination for breaking character in costume is documented. Cast members who tell guests, "I don't know" or "I can't help you" are subject to review. The smile in a Disney park is a contractual obligation. At this tier, the park you visited is a curated stage. The infrastructure beneath it is something else. Tier 5, the hidden crimes. Acts committed by individuals using Disney's reach, or on Disney's properties, or with Disney's resources. The Disney College program and the worker pipeline. Disney runs a year-round internship program for American and international college students at its Florida and California parks. Participants work full-time in park operations and live in company housing on Disney-owned property. Reports from former participants over decades describe long hours, low pay, restrictive housing rules, and a closed community in which workplace and home life are administered by the same employer. Multiple legal claims have been filed alleging that the program operates closer to indentured labor than internship. Disney has settled some. Disney has contested others. The program continues, largely unchanged in structure. The cruise line incidents. Disney operates a fleet of cruise ships. Cruise ships, by maritime law, operate under whatever country's flag they are registered with, often the Bahamas or Bermuda. United States criminal jurisdiction is limited. Reports of crimes on Disney cruise ships, sexual assaults, disappearances, thefts, are reported to Disney corporate security first, and to the relevant flag. State authorities second. The most cited statistic from FBI cruise incident reports made public through Freedom of Information requests shows Disney cruise ships generating fewer reported incidents per Pascal Singer than the industry average. The same data also shows that what counts as a reportable incident is, in part, decided by the cruise line itself. The predator detection problem. Across multiple decades, individuals employed by or associated with Disney's American park operations have been arrested in undercover sting operations targeting child predators. Disney's response over the years has been consistent. The company terminates employment upon arrest, declines to comment on specific cases, and points to the size of its workforce as a statistical context. The exact count of such arrests, compiled by Florida and California news organizations from public records, is in the dozens over recent decades. The company's screening process is robust. The company's screening process has not been perfect. The animator who disappeared. Multiple senior Disney creative figures have, over the decades, exited the company under circumstances the company chose not to discuss publicly. The most cited recent example is John Lasseter, the chief creative officer who took a leave of absence in 2017 amid harassment allegations and exited permanently in 2018. Earlier examples are less well documented because the company simply did not publicly explain their departures at the time. Disney's standard practice with departing senior creatives is silence, a settlement, and a non-disclosure agreement. Several Disney legends have, by the company's choice, ceased to be Disney legends. They are no longer mentioned in archival material. Their names slowly fade from the company's official memory. At this tier, the brand sits one layer above a corporate entity that is no different from any other large American corporation, capable of misconduct, capable of cover, capable of survival. Tier 6, the suppressed material. Stories, films, and people that Disney has chosen through legal and archival mechanisms to remove from public memory. The shelved Disney features multiple feature-length animated and live-action productions made by Disney were never released or were released and then withdrawn. Mickey's Melodrammer, a 1933 short in which Mickey and Minnie appear in blackface. The Story of Menstruation, a 1946 educational film made by Disney for Kotex. Several World War II propaganda shorts, Education for Death, Reason and Emotion, Der Fahrer's Face, which were widely seen in the 1,940 seconds and are now archival rarities. These works exist. They are not on Disney Plus, they are not on home video, they live in archives accessible to researchers under controlled conditions. The Song of the South Cousins. Beyond Song of the South, Disney's wartime and immediate post-war period produced material the company quietly does not circulate. Saludos Amigos, made during a State Department-funded goodwill tour of South America in 1942, contains caricature material that the company no longer foregrounds. The Three Caballeros, the follow-up film, is more often promoted but has its own sequences quietly trimmed in re-releases. Disney's wartime catalog was, in part, a foreign policy instrument of the United States government. That history has not been hidden. It has been allowed to become unfamiliar. The Walt Disney version of America. Through the late 1950 seconds and early 1960 seconds, the company produced a long series of nature documentaries called True Life Adventures. Several of them, including White Wilderness in 1958, contain stage sequences presented as natural behavior. The most infamous sequence in White Wilderness purports to show lemmings committing mass suicide by leaping off a cliff. Lemmings do not commit mass suicide. The filmmakers working in Alberta herded captive lemmings onto a turntable and pushed them off a cliff into a river to create the footage. The deception was uncovered decades later by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. The false lemming myth, now widespread in popular culture, was largely created by a Disney film that lied. The film is still in the Disney archive. It is no longer easily found. The Internal Censorship Board. Disney maintains an internal content review process that determines what archival material may be shown to the public, on what platforms, and with what context. This process is not public. Decisions about which films appear on Disney+, which segments are edited, which works are removed from circulation entirely, are made by this internal group. The company has confirmed the process exists. It has not published its criteria. The dead voices. Several longtime Disney voice actors and creative figures have died in circumstances the company has handled with notable silence. Wayne Allwine, the third voice of Mickey Mouse, who died in 2009. Russi Taylor, the third voice of Minnie Mouse and Allwine's wife, who died in 2019. The company observed standard obituaries. It did not produce extended retrospectives. Earlier examples: the original voice of Mickey, Walt himself; the original voice of Donald Duck, Clarence Nash, who died in 1985, received minimal corporate attention at the time. The voices live on recast, the original actors fading from any context outside niche fan communities. At Tier 6, the Disney Archive is not a vault. It is a curation. What is forgotten was chosen to be forgotten. Tier 7. The bottom of the iceberg. At the bottom of every Disney Iceberg chart, you will find a small cluster of allegations and rumors that are either unverifiable, deeply contested, or so persistent in the folklore that they have outgrown their factual basis. Stating them is not endorsing them. Walking past them is not refuting them. This is what sits at the floor of the public conversation about the company. The MK Ultra connections. During the 1950 seconds and 1960 seconds, several individuals connected to American intelligence, including researchers funded by the CIA's MK Ultra program, used commercial entertainment films in their work on suggestibility, subliminal cueing, and behavioral conditioning. Disney films of the era were among many studied. There is no evidence Disney produced material at the direction of intelligence agencies. There is evidence that intelligence researchers used commercial films, including Disney films, as test material. The internet has merged these two facts repeatedly into a single claim. The original documents do not support that merging. The subliminal frame claims. Over the decades, viewers have cataloged individual frames from Disney animated films alleged to contain inappropriate images. The Rescuers, in a 1977 release, contained what appeared to be a photograph of a nude woman in a window in 2 frames. Disney confirmed the frames in a 1999 recall and quietly removed them. Other claims, a single word in The Lion King, a priest's robe in The Little Mermaid, a hidden image in Aladdin, are contested. Some are real deliberately or carelessly, inserted by individual animators. Most, on close examination, are pareidolia, viewers seeing patterns where there are none. The Rescuers frames are the only confirmed example. The pedophile ring rumors. Since at least the 1990 seconds, an internet rumor cycle has tied senior Disney figures to organized abuse rings. None of these rumors has been substantiated in court. Individual Disney employees have, as covered earlier, been arrested for individual crimes. There is no evidence in any released legal proceeding of a coordinated ring operating within the company. The persistence of the rumor cycle is itself a feature of how the internet processes a large family-targeted corporation. The rumor is at the bottom of the chart because of how often it appears. The chart is not asserting it as fact. The Walt was secretly, something claims. Walt was a Mason. Walt was a Nazi sympathizer. Walt was secretly Jewish. Walt was secretly anti-Semitic. None of these claims in their strongest forms are supported by his documented life. Walt was not a Mason. The claim originates in confusion with the Demolay Youth Organization, of which he was briefly a member. Walt did meet with Leni Riefenstahl in 1938. And that meeting has been used as the foundation for the Nazi sympathy claim. but Walt's wartime production of explicit anti-Nazi propaganda contradicts it. Walt was not secretly Jewish. The anti-Semitism claim originates with quoted remarks from former employees, which are contested. Each of these claims persists in folklore because Walt was a public figure with no living defenders, an archive curated by his own corporation, and a life long enough that selective excerpts can paint many portraits. What may be true at the bottom? That the Walt Disney Company is in the end a very large American corporation that has, like other very large American corporations, been involved in episodes of misconduct, suppression, and harm. The bottom of the iceberg is not a unique evil. It is the bottom of an ordinary corporate iceberg, one that happens to wear a mouse-eared brand on its surface tier. At the surface, you have a beloved brand and 100 years of well-told history. Beneath the surface, you have a documented set of controversies that the company prefers to discuss only when forced. Beneath that, a founder more politically active and personally harder than his image. Beneath that, the architecture of the parks themselves, a sovereign zone Florida district, an underground network of corridors. A smile that is contractually required. Beneath that, the hidden crimes, some committed by individuals, some structurally enabled. Beneath that, the suppressed material the corporation has chosen to remove from public memory. And at the bottom, the rumors and folklore that may or may not be true, that persist because the brand is too large not to attract them. The Walt Disney Company is, in the popular imagination, a place of childhood. In the historical record, it is an industrial corporation with a 100-year operating history, and an archive most of its customers will never see. The brand is the surface. The corporation is the iceberg.